Welcome to Sacred Stories. I'm your host, Reverend Patricia Brooks, and today we have awakening teacher and shaman, Sonya Bibilos, with us. Welcome, Sonya.
Thank you, Patricia. It's wonderful to be here.
I'm excited to have you, an awakening teacher and a shaman. I shared with you right before we came on the air that a shaman is probably one of my very favorite people in the entire world. So can you It's true. It's true. It's just incredible, who shamans are and the work that they do. Can you share a little bit more with our audience who Sonya Bibilos is and specifically what an awakening teacher and shaman means?
You bet. Thank you. So one of the things that has happened in my life is that I've had a series of awakenings to the divine within us and all around us, and many facets of awakening and many different flavors and experiences of awakening. And so because I was naturally doing my own healing work on myself also throughout this time, and I was doing some big healing work from some childhood trauma, I kind of fell into this work of support.
Welcome to the conference. Please enter the conference ID followed by the pound key. Thank you. Guest ID accepted.
Voice inside me say, this is good, but this isn't just it. And then I took a deep breath and I got a little deeper and I felt the source of everything underneath that. And that's what I thought was my first official awakening. But when I had that awakening, I realized that awakening was connected to the one I'd had when I was 17. And then after that, I had a subsequent series of awakenings, a heart awakening where I opened to the infinite love of all things. I had other awakenings where I just dropped all sense of self and I became completely one with all things without any sense of a Sonya being at all. And it's been a beautiful experience until finally I had one awakening where the awareness of oneness never left me. And that's stayed with me ever since.
Sonya, that's absolutely incredible. What you've just described, multiple awakenings, is what I believe people work and study and attempt or try or journey for their entire life, even to just scratch the surface of one of them. So that when you say what you thought was an altered state of consciousness, where you felt you as a oneness with all things, what I thought of immediately, which is so funny, is years ago I read the book, The Celestine Prophecy. And
yes.
And that book talks about really energetically being one and seeing the energy of all. That's the biggest takeaway I had with the Celestine Prophecy, and that true state of oneness and being conscious of it. So as you were speaking, I immediately went to that place and thought, wow, Sonya's had those experiences that I've only read about in this consciousness.
Yeah, I feel that it's such a blessing, to be able to have these experiences. And I've also learned that there's a huge wave of people who are called to awaken in this lifetime, right now alive on the planet. And what I've learned is that with the right cultivation, the right environment, the right support, that people can begin to realize those awakenings probably more than they realize, and definitely in greater numbers than maybe what we've ever had before. Who knows? I wasn't alive thousands of years ago, but it seems like there's a lot of people awakening right now. It's very beautiful.
Right, or you just don't have a conscious remembrance of your lifetime thousands of years ago.
That's right.
I'll just offer that. Well, let me ask you, though, because I think that is true, though, but I believe that there's certainly people speak about the spiritual awakening, expansion of consciousness. I know that is our work here at Sacred Stories, is sharing divine voices and helping people on that journey, really stepping into that. When you say that you feel that there's many people experiencing that and that you've experienced it yourself, why do you think that is? What is the purpose behind what you're going through and seeing other people also?
Oh, that's a great question. The way, it's funny because one of my spiritual teachers, the way he talks about awakening and seeing divine consciousness is that it's truth. And when I met him and I heard him speak that way, it resonated with something so deep inside me, because that's what it feels like to me. It feels like the truth. It feels like this other reality that we've created where we're separate, we're lost, we're lonely, we're alone. That other reality is like a movie that we're projecting. And to realize that we are truly one with all things, that love is always here, that it's abundant, that is actually the reality. It's shocking for the mind when the mind first realizes that what we've believed all this time might be a movie or an illusion or a dream. But this new reality, or the true reality, the real reality of oneness, it's such a relief. It's a relief to the mind. It's a relief to the heart. That's why I also incorporate healing and the shaman piece with the awakening, because when your inner body, when your inner mind and inner heart know that you're one with all things, that begins a very, very deep healing of the pain of separation that most people experience throughout their lives.
Find your relief. Just in that, there is just such a truth. I think that speaks so powerfully to the soul, because I believe that, yes, many people, they know there's something more. They don't feel right or good or connected looking through just the human perspective. And I think it is a sense of relief, when they can connect and go deeper. That's a beautiful word for it, relief.
Yeah. That's certainly what I experienced. I mean, I experienced relief on many, many levels and many, many layers throughout my awakening process, And I think it's so harmonizing for people to remember their true nature. That's how I talk about it, is that you're remembering who you truly are. It's like a whole other way of understanding what it means to be human. So let's
talk about the oneness for a second, because I think that that's to some degree misunderstood. When we say oneness, what is the oneness? Is it simply just with the spiritual self, or are you speaking even of the oneness with all of the kingdoms that are here on the earth plane, the animal kingdoms, the nature kingdom, the elemental kingdoms? I mean, there's so many beings, seen and unseen, that I believe make up the oneness. So are you speaking of them also?
That's a great question. I am speaking of absolutely everything. I think it's important to name that oneness is, in a sense, just kind of one facet of awakening. It's the one I often mention the most, but it really is just one facet of awakening. There's other things we could talk about, like awakening to the divine mystery, infinite love, the vastness, emptiness, whatever. But the oneness quality is really, there is no separation to anything underneath. And what I began to realize is that there's formless and form. And even angels or other realms are in a sense a kind of form. They're an unseen form, but they're still in the world of form. And the formless, where it's the source, right? The formless source is where we are all connected and where we are all one. And then that formless source expresses itself out into the universe in these many, many infinite numbers of expressions and shapes and sizes and colors that we see as the world around us, or we intuitively feel or see in the world beyond the physical earth. And so maybe that's a good description of oneness. Did that make sense?
Absolutely. It makes sense, and then it opens up to a million questions. I think that's the divine mystery that you even alluded to. Yeah, I think we're just scratching the surface on our human understanding of the magnificence of all that is. When you speak that you awaken to the oneness, one of your awakenings, you've had a heart awakening and you've had other awakenings. Can you describe a little bit more, though? What aspect of the oneness? I think I just want to keep digging into that a little bit more, because I feel like I'm scratching the surface a little bit. I go out into nature and I am one with the trees. I can see some of the tree spirits. I talk to them. I mean, the rocks are, without a doubt, the rocks. I mean, there's certain rocks, especially at one of my old homes, that I would just lay my cheek alongside the rock face and I would just cry. I would just cry. The emotion that came up, it was just such a connection. I just knew the energy, the spirit, the beauty in the rocks was home to me. You know what I mean? So I'm getting glimpses of feeling of that oneness, and I know there's so much more. So when you were first awakening to the oneness, what was the oneness? Was it nature? Was it your higher self? Was it the angels? Just a little more about that would be beautiful.
Yeah, that's great, and that's beautiful what you shared. So in a sense, what you're experiencing, that deep heartfelt connection with nature, with the trees, with the rocks, for an absolute awakening, for that next level of awakening. Maybe absolute isn't the best word, but that next level of awakening, you just want to take it a little farther. And what I often say is you want to take it below the mind. So in your very deep connection to nature, you're experiencing it as your mind is aware of that connection. But if you go below that, which is what I experience in my awakening, it's what I experience every day when I meditate, I just go below the mind and I feel for something more. I feel for something deeper. I feel into that deeper source, that source of all things, the source of the rock, the source of the trees. And that source is a consciousness that's humming and singing underneath everything. We're so used to focusing all of our attention on the form, on the tree, on the leaf, on the butterfly, on the flower, on the sky or the angel or whatever we're focused on. But underneath all of that is something much bigger, greater, more vast. It's immense. When I saw that, I began to realize that the source of everything is the ocean. It's the bigness, and all these little things, like a tree is just a little tiny grain of sand on the beach of the ocean. It's just kind of the little tiny part of the ocean. And yet, all my life before awakening, I'd focused all my attention on the grain of sand. And then after awakening, I could focus my attention on the source. How does that feel? Does that make more sense?
So emotion surges through me. So when I'm starting to feel the connection, the emotion comes through me so strongly that I almost feel like my body will break open. And I think at that point, I stop it because I don't even know what to do. It becomes almost painful, a beautiful pain, but painful, where I don't even know what will unleash if I just allow it to continue. Does that make sense? So my question, let me just go to my question, because I'm just sitting here and I'm want to jump out of my chair because I feel like there's hope that I can go that next level now, because I literally feel like I almost stop it because it's so much. I don't know what to do with it. So I guess that is my question. How do myself and others, I know others feel the same way. I even wrote a blog that says I want to break open with emotion. I do, and then I'm like, wait, that might really hurt because I really feel like this physical body cannot contain what is really there right below the surface. And so what do I do? What do others do? How do we go beneath to the consciousness and feel for the source and handle the physicality of it at the same time?
Oh, I love that question. And I love that you're experiencing such a big emotion. And what I want to say to you is, let yourself break open. You're going to be okay. It's not the same as big breaking open emotion that we have as human beings when there's a tragedy or, when we're really upset about something or hurt by something. This is the breaking open. When you have big emotion that's trying to break open, that's all the little gates and fences and walls that have kept you from remembering your true nature. So when you allow yourself to break through the emotion, to just feel the emotion and move to the other side of it. Let it flow. Don't get lost in the emotion. Let it carry you all the way to the other side, and the other side is home. On the other side is your true nature. On the other side is source. So don't be afraid of the emotion. I didn't have big emotion, but what I had was depression. One of the things I realized in my first awakening was that every time in my life I'd come up to the source, I'd get depressed for some reason. Like I would just kind of shrink inside, and I had to kind of break through that little contraction of fear or depression or whatever it was to get to home. And once I did, I was free. It's kind of like breaking through a sound barrier. You break through, and then you're fine. You know, you're totally, totally fine. And it's very liberating. So it's wonderful to give that gift to yourself, and that's how I want you to think of it. One of the last piece of advice, and then I'll get, your feedback, but one of the things that my first spiritual teacher told me is don't settle for a small spiritual experience. Don't settle for, he called it realization with a small r. Keep going. That's why in my description of one of my awakenings, when I talked about feeling everything around me, and I had this voice that said, keep going, what else is there? And I got through that experience of feeling everything to a direct experience of the source. So keep going and arrive at home.
Don't settle for a small spiritual experience. Like, I feel like I could cry right now. Like, my whole body is tingling, and with excitement and trepidation and wanting to run outside and hug a tree at this exact moment. My question is, does it always happen the same way? Does it get easier? Does the connection, to be quite honest, and I don't want this to sound weird or wrong, but to be quite honest, it's exhausting, the amount of emotion that could come through me when I'm connecting. And does it become a little more effortless as I keep doing it? I guess I'm hoping for some hope, or is it, you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Does it just...
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's a great question, and it does. It'll change. It has to change. So think of the emotion as the first gateway. It's your first doorway, and you're going to go through a giant wave of emotion, and then you're going to be on the other side of it. Now, you might experience a couple more waves of emotion like that for a while, but it's not going to last. It's not intended to last. Again, the awakening is meant to take you to a place that's beyond that emotion, and the emotion is just kind of the fences. It's just the gates, holding you from your true nature. It's also important to know that even though, of course, I'm speaking about my personal experience of awakening, everyone's awakening is radically different. Sometimes somewhat similar, but very, very different. I often say that there's 7 billion pathways to awaken on the planet right now because there's 7 billion people on the planet right now. And I get the privilege of working with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of individuals on their very distinct and unique awakening journeys. And they're all different, beautifully, miraculously different. So it's important to kind of follow your own path and your own natural evolution. Yeah.
So I interview many different spiritual teachers, and part of what keeps coming up in the conversations regarding the expansion of consciousness on the planet today, though, is that it is the emotion is a very big part of this, that it used to be done before more with, maybe the mind or a connection and a detachment from the body, let's say, but that the emotion is the driver now, which I never really made that connection until we're speaking now, because that is absolutely how I connect is through emotion. And I'm not suggesting that's everyone. I do agree that everyone's path and awakening is a little bit different. But I guess if you can just speak to that a little bit about the purpose of the emotion. Does that make sense? You know, why is the emotion traveling through the emotional body important?
Yeah, that's a very important question, actually. And I think you're right on that. It's different in our day and age. I think that we've evolved culturally to have a different relationship with our emotions and our emotional body. And so emotions today, especially in our culture, can't just be assigned okay, dissociate from your emotions, put it over there, and then you can see God. I don't think that's very healthy for most people. For some people it works, but for most people I think it doesn't, at least my clients and students. So, I mean, I think that there's different categories of emotion also. And I've been speaking to what I'm feeling in you, which is the, what I call it's almost like an ecstasy and grief at the same time. I'm an empath, and so I'm feeling your body, Patricia, and when I'm feeling you, I feel how the emotion that comes up is finally I'm coming home. It's the arrival. It's the knowing. It's the recognition of coming home and knowing. But there's also grief that's being shed in that, and I think that's a very common combination of emotions that people feel. Is just kind of the grief that just has to shed, and it's grief about all kinds of things. And it's so numerous. We can go into it if it's helpful for you, but it's just grief. And the grief, I would say that all grief just needs to be allowed to move, not wallowed in, not attached to, not identified with, just move. It just needs to flow, just like a river. Just let the grief flow. And go ahead.
No. Please continue.
So I think that, you know, this kind of emotion that I'm feeling from you is an important sign of A, the readiness to awaken and arrive home, and B, that you're right on the threshold. It's kind of a threshold emotion. There are other emotions, more difficult emotions or challenging emotions, that actually can also be gateways. If you work with them well and you're doing a kind of healing recovery process along with the awakening journey, it can be very, very beautiful. That's a little bit more complex, right? So, I just wanted to mention that too, because I'm sure your listeners will be having all kinds of emotions coming up, and it's important to name those just at least a little bit as well. Yeah. What was your question, hon?
Well, what's really fascinating is, yes, without a doubt, and I think that's why I hold back sometimes, because the power of the ecstasy and the grief together, you couldn't have pinned it any better. That's incredible. Is, you know, it almost hurts. It almost hurts. But I know that it's not all mine. I believe you keep using the term gateways. I believe that many of us that are here today, we're gateways for the emotion to move through, to clear for the collective.
Yes.
So, right. So I know that. I know that when stuff comes through me, and I'm not necessarily empathic in the sense of is as strong as some other people, but I believe everyone is empathic that is here embodied. All spirits are empathic, right? We're embodied spirits. How could we not be empathic? Degrees of empathic ability different. However, I believe that many of us who are on this threshold, or many of us that are doing this work, myself included, I am doing the work in service to the greater collective. And I believe that's why it is so much emotion. There's so much stuff to move through. And it's almost it's almost like, whoa, I don't know if I can take that next step, because what's going to happen? You know, with trepidation, I'm like, I want to go into it so bad. I want to surrender to it so bad. And then I'm like, I don't even know if I can handle that level of what's moving through. But however, what you're saying, which is so important, and it's giving me courage, is it's energy, and I can become the vessel. It probably hurts more because I keep wallowing it up instead of just letting it move through.
Exactly. That's what catches people. I mean, we're used to having our emotions be something about us, and so we sit in them and we analyze them and we get a little lost in them, and that's the opposite of what you want to do in a situation like this. You just want to allow it to exist and then allow it to move. Just allow. And I want to say also that it's very helpful to create a supportive environment for yourself to do that, to have a little retreat for yourself. I mean, one of the things that helped me in my first awakening was being on a 3-week silent retreat by myself. That was hugely helpful, you know, and I could move through emotions and I could move through different experiences as I was going through it. And it was loving and nourishing and nurturing for me. And I recommend that, even if it's for an afternoon, you know, whatever it is that you need, whatever it is that you feel guided to create for yourself.
Right.
And
Sonya, I was going to say that's so important. It's not like we're going to run out and say, okay, I have a 30-minute lunch break. Let me go awaken. Right?
Yes,
no,
exactly.
We need the space. We need to create the space around us. And I think that's an honoring of the process. I think that's important that we do that in honoring of who we are and the work that we're doing and really honoring of all that is.
Exactly. And I'll just comment really briefly on what you were talking about, the emotion not just being yours. Yes, it's 100% true. Most people experience some sort of threshold of feeling the suffering of the collective and having to move through that and grieve for that, and the awakening, especially, I think, to love. The heart just wants to pour open and love everything. And as it does that, you know, you can feel and get in touch with all that suffering. So it's okay. Just let it, be aware of it, pray, move through. If we had more time, I could go into more specifics, but you get the idea, hopefully. And that's good.
Oh, without a doubt. And we'll have to have you back for sure. So let's talk a little bit more, though, about the work that you do with people, because you do this. And so just dive into that a little bit more, and then how people can reach out to you directly, because I know that the work you do is incredible service to others and to the collective. So how can people find you?
Thank you so much. Well, I do private sessions where we go really, really deep. So imagine this kind of dialogue, but for 90 minutes, and we're going to go into all the little details and experiences of you, right? And as an empath, I get to feel you and create energy work and work with angels and other guides to guide you on your path to realize your spiritual potential. So that's the private sessions. But I also have classes and retreat at home programs where people can take the work into their home and do it at their own pace. So if they would like to learn more about any and all of that, they can go to my website, illuminatedwisdom.com. Pretty easy to get to. And I have a lot of free gifts on that website. And the one that I was called out to offer to your listeners is one called Your Unique Soul Code. It's about unlocking your divine potential, and it's a short ebook that you can read to affirm. I think of it as a mirror for the true divine potential within you and your true nature. And so if it can support you to have that affirmation and to help you to open up to that true potential, I hope anybody listening will take advantage of that on my website. It's in my bookstore. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That sounds wonderful. So Sonya Bibilos and illuminatedwisdom.com. Sonya, this has been an absolute pleasure spending this time with you. I want to thank you so much for joining us on Sacred Stories.
Thank you so much. I have so enjoyed speaking with you, and truly blessings for all that you're doing, and blessings for all of your listeners wherever they may be on their journeys. Blessings and love. Thank you so much, Patricia.
Thank you. And listeners, thank you so much for joining us. Remember to subscribe to our podcast, Sacred Stories. Like, share, comment, let everyone know the amazing, beautiful spiritual teachers and beings that are around Sacred Stories and their beautiful sacred stories of consciousness that they share.